Hey guys, my name is Dale Cha and I'm a music producer in New York City. I used to make bachata, but I'm now focused on other genres. But I still go to bachata socials, and I keep hearing remixes with the same amateurish sound that basically require no imagination whatsoever. And this really frustrates me as both a dancer and a musician. Well, you probably know what I'm talking about. You will hear like an original track and then a bachata loop that kind of repeats itself. The remixer might vary the loop a little bit here or there and then kind of end with the same bachata loop. And to be fancy, the remixer will like add an effect, special effect here or there. But the total amount of time to take something like this is about 15 minutes. And the talent or the skill required is very minimal, almost zero. Anybody can do this. And in the aggregate, this is a problem because in the aggregate, everybody is using the same loops now. So the net effect is that all the remixes sound the same. Doing this is basically like the Comic Sans of music. Comic Sans is probably the most hated font on earth. It's also the most commonly used, to the point of just being humorous. Furthermore, to make matters worse, remixers will upload their remixes to YouTube with terrible artwork, with really like low lighting, and a funny disclaimer about fair use, as if it's going to protect them, even though remixes are not protected under fair use by definition. So, furthermore, I see some remixers put their stuff online for sale, which is a terrible idea to sell copyrighted work, without the proper permissions, because of the really, really bad things you will face if you're caught, such as 5 to 10 years of prison. And here are the sources for that. Well, why am I doing this? Why am I making a bachata tutorial? Well, hopefully I can inspire somebody who has the inspiration and the motivation to make something special. And who knows, one of you might be the next musical genius. And if you get exposure to bachata, then maybe you can contribute to the art form in a very meaningful way. And I'm pretty sure dancers will appreciate you for that. Okay, so this is the introduction to making a bachata remix. I'm going to split this up into 3 parts. The first is basic music theory. The second is how bachata music works. So basically how we apply the music theory to bachata. And finally, making the remix. Now, if you are familiar with parts 1 and 2, you can just skip ahead to part 3. Some things you'll need are a computer, audio editing software. I use Logic Pro X. You can also use Ableton Live, which is very, very popular. Both Logic and Ableton are about a couple $100 each, I think. And some free ones are Reaper and Audacity. Finally, you need the willingness to put in the work. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you have that. All right. So let's move on to basic music theory. The bare necessities to make a bachata remix are rhythm, song structure, and harmony. So for rhythm, you may already be aware that modern pop music repeats in 4 counts. So you can count to 4 over and over again when you listen to music. If you're a dancer, you probably count in 8. Well, as musicians, we are going to count in 4. And each 4 count is called a bar. And the speed of the count is the tempo, measured in beats per minute, or BPM. And for bachata, that's going to range between 115 and 140. I tend to make songs between 120 and 125. It's totally personal preference. So here's an example of some music, and I'll count to it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, you may be asking yourself, where exactly do you start counting? In other words, where is the 1? Now, there's no straightforward answer to it. I can't quantify that for you. You essentially have to feel it. The 1 is usually where the strongest beat occurs in the bar, in the music, and usually it's like the beginning of a new phrase or a new idea. If you still have trouble finding the 1, I would recommend listening to music a lot and just practicing counting to 4, and kind of experimenting to see where the 1 goes and where it makes most sense to put it. If this link right here might help you if you're still having trouble. Maybe Bootsy Collins can help you with that. Okay. Next we have song structure. Typical song structure goes like this: intro, verse, chorus, a transition called the bridge, maybe another verse, chorus, and then an outro. And these are typical ranges for each section expressed in bars. There are a million different variations of this, so take this with a grain of salt. And if you want a graphical representation of it, this is kind of what it looks like. If I made one bar actually look like a bar, then these are 4 bars, each bar being 4 counts again. All right. So next, we're going to go into harmony. This is probably the most difficult of the 3. These are the 88 keys of the piano. You don't have to know how to play piano, but it helps to look at it while you're figuring this stuff out. And for some background, we name the different keys on the piano a letter. So it's going to look like this. Okay? So if we start all the way here, we start with A. To the very leftmost note on the piano, we start with A, count up. Let's just ignore the black keys for a second. We go up until G, and then we start over at A again. Do the same thing, start over at A again. You'll notice that the letters, when they appear, they have the same appearance as the key before it or after it. And that's a common theme in music. It seems to basically repeat itself over and over. Now, you should understand that each song is in a specific key, a major or minor key. Don't get too caught up in what those are, but just be aware of that. And simply speaking, this means that you will only use specific notes in the song. So once you know what key the song is in, that will give you a lot of information as to what notes you can actually press when you want to play along to the song. So if I told you that a song is in the key of F major, then these are the notes you get to play. All right, in blue. Now, if we know that we're in the key of F major, we can also number the notes in that scale, which is what this is called, from 1, and then for each consecutive blue note we can go up by 1. Once you reach F, you might put 8, but instead you can put 1, since it's essentially the same note but in a different register. So yeah, like I said, since the notes repeat themselves, you can actually apply these blue notes across the entire piano. So it's not just this one section. You can make this pattern across the entire piano, and it'll look something like this. Okay, so if I tell you that a song is in the key of F major, you should have a mental image of this in your mind, and just kind of play with only these notes. Everything else is like lava. Don't touch it. And this is overgeneralizing, okay, but this is just to get you started. In reality, you don't just play any note in the scale at any time. Certain combinations of notes called chords work at different times of the song, and how these chords evolve over time during the song is called chord progression. Right? Now, how do we make a chord? Well, imagine that you can only use 3 fingers on the piano for now, using your right hands. If you don't have a piano on you, then you can visit this site. It has a virtual piano. Okay, so, using only your 3 fingers on your right hand, like this, imagine you can play notes on the scale. So first, you're going to start with your thumb, and you're going to put that anywhere in the scale. So anywhere on the blue piano keys that we had. Then you're going to put your index finger 2 notes or 2 numbers above that. And then your next finger is going to go 2 notes or numbers above that. And obviously, you are going to stay in the scale. All right? So, for instance, let's put our thumb on the 4. All right? Then if you go 2 numbers or 2 notes above that, that's the 6. 2 numbers above that is the 1. So 4, 6, 1 is how you make the 4 chord. If you want to use numbers, it's the B flat. This is a flat sign chord. And instead of 4, 6, 1, it's you can call it B flat, D, F. And that is the B flat major chord. All right, I hope that makes sense. To give you an idea of what that sounds like, the 4 was about here. 6, 1. Okay, those are the keys you would play if I told you to play a 4 chord, and you would just put your thumb here and your other 2 fingers here and here. As the chords progress, your thumb is going to be on a different note. So for instance, one chord progression looks like this. 1, 6, 4, 5. When we use Roman numerals, that means it's a chord. Okay, it's don't get too caught up in it, but if it's an uppercase Roman numeral, it means it's a major chord. If it's a lowercase, that means it's a minor. Right? So if we're in F major, then 1, 6, 5, 4 corresponds to F, the D minor chord, B flat, and C. Those are the the numbers on that scale that we had up there. All right. So let's try to do an example here. In this chord progression, you would put your thumb on the 1, then the 6, then the 4, and the 5, and your other 2 fingers are going to play exactly what we talked about: the 2 notes above by an interval of, I guess, 2 notes within the scale. So let's say you want to play, I wish I put this, let's say you play the 1 chord, if we're in F, right? And then you're going to play the 6 chord, which is here, 4 chord here, and the 5 chord here. All right, so my thumb just went from here all right. Now, an important concept is don't jump around notes too much. Try not to jump around the piano too much. I guess if we go back to that example, the 1, 6, 4, 5 chord progression, you'll notice that we went from 1 here to the 6 here, and that's a big jump, right? Well, one alternative is that we could go to the 6 here, which is much closer to the 1. Okay, so in that example, we did, let's see, we did this. Sorry. Well, instead, we're going to do this. And with the chords, it sounds like this. All right. Now, okay, I'm about to blow your mind, but just try to stay with me if you can. Sometimes we need to use inversions. So sometimes it's not so straightforward trying to make the notes not travel too much. So let's say we had to go from 1 to 5, right? So we went from 1 to 5 here. Well, that's a big jump. If you go this way, it's also a big jump. So let's see. Right, so let me go 1 octave up. Sorry about that. 1 to 5 is like this. Going up, going down, it's like this. Okay. There's a lot of like movement happening. Try to make it so that the notes you're currently playing don't necessarily move that much. And what I mean by that is that, you just look at each note in the chord that you're playing, and then what's the next chord? Well, it's this, right? And obviously the 5, we're using the 5 on the bottom with our thumb on the bottom. Well, you can flip that up here. So this is the 5 that's up, but we're using the 2 other notes in the chord that are lower that would have belonged to this guy over here. So this is an inversion, and that's, quote, preferable to just using the regular chords like this or like this, because look what happens. It's going to sound like this, from the 1 to the 5, right? All of those keys are either in common or very close to the notes that you were playing, right? Compared to this or this. All right, that is a very, very important concept. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that just imagine that all of your fingers are very lazy and they don't want to move that much. Now, don't be scared about this concept of chord progressions. They are very important. But it's not that complicated, because chord progressions, typically, they repeat over and over in a song. So all you need to know are like probably 4 chords. You know what the chord progression is? It's usually 4 chords, maybe 5 in typical pop songs. And like, that's it. It repeats over and over and over again. So to give you an idea, let's go to our song structure, right? I'm going to give you a snippet of what the song we're going to remix later. And, in the middle of the song, it's going to be a verse, chorus, bridge, verse, and these are the durations of each. And these are the bars, right? So 16 bars for verse and chorus, and then 8 for the bridge. Well, the chord progression looks like this: 1, 6, 4, 5. It's the same progression we were just using. And literally every 2 bars, the chord changes to, the next chord, over and over and over again. So it's not that hard. Now that you know how to play chords, hopefully, and you know what these numbers mean, you're basically almost set to play along with the song. And it's really interesting because different parts of the song will have a different feel to it. Like, I think the chorus is more, uplifting. The bridge is kind of like lamenting or something like that. But they're the same chord progressions. It's essentially the same notes playing. So it's really, it's a really powerful thing you need to understand. And don't be intimidated by it. I know it seems pretty technical, but it is important, and it is not that complicated. All right, so let's go to the summary of part 1. Rhythm, we talked about using 4 counts called bars. BPM for bachata is going to be between 115 and 140. For song structure, I think that's pretty straightforward for you. Harmony, we learned that songs have keys and chord progressions, and some resources to find these things are, Note Discoverers. That has some songs, it will tell you key and BPM, but not chord progression. Once you find the key, then you need to know which blue notes, so to speak, you can play. Well, this site has all of them. For the major chords, this is the address for the major chords. You'll see all of the keys there. If a song is in a minor chord, if Note Discover or whatever you're using tells you it's in a minor chord, then you replace major with minor, minor, and that has all that stuff there. For the chord progressions, this site is pretty good. Okay, like 85 to 90% accurate. As you get more advanced, you can use your own judgment, but it has a lot of songs. And for reference, if you need a reminder of what the piano keys are named, here they are. Right, all the white keys get a letter. The black keys are named, can be called two different names. They are called that way because their names are based on the note they are most adjacent to. So it can either be called an F sharp or G flat. The sharp means it's one semitone above whatever note it's in reference to. The flat is one semitone below. All right. Okay, part 2. How bachata music works. We're going to talk about instruments and the concepts for a remix. If you're watching this, then the instruments are probably obvious to you. The bongos, right? Gira, the guitars, lead guitar and rhythm guitar. Lead guitar obviously usually takes the voice, the main lead of the instrumentals, of the guitars rather, and the bass guitar. So let's look at one bar of bachata music. So I made this little table here. The row on the top represents the counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Hence, this is one bar of music. I also put in the, off counts or off beats as well. This is, the midpoint, the exact midpoint between 1 and 2, counts 1 and 2. So it's going to sound like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And they're important because we're going to put a lot of notes there. So pay attention to that. Then we have the guitars and bass guitar. Okay. And percussion. We're going to start with the percussion first. So what does the percussion look like? Well, this is it. This is the basic template for the percussion. A high strong note on 1, a medium note here, another high kind of strong note on 3, and then a low note, not quiet, but a low note on 4. And for the gira, for now, as you're starting out, put a gira hit on each time that you play a bongo. Okay? And that is going to sound something like this. 1. Okay, that's... for the guitars, the guitars look like this. For the guitars and the bass guitar, we're going to play notes. So actual notes. And so that's why I'm bringing up the key and the piano. And let's also, imagine again, we're still in the key of F major. So therefore, these are the notes you get to play. The guitars look like this. If I'm assuming we're on the 1 chord or the F major chord, we're going to play those notes. We're going to play with those notes. So this is the 1 here. You're going to put your thumb here, 3, 5. And what the lead guitar does, it doesn't play them simultaneously. It plays around going up and down the chord. You can go 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. It can do 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. I mean, it can really play around. If you listen to bachata music, you probably know what I'm talking about. The segunda does a syncopated type of pattern like this, and I will play it for you. 3/5 means you're playing both 3 and 5 at the same time. This note and this note at the same time, and it's playing with the offbeats. You'll notice that these two notes that finish the chord kind of play on every offbeat. Here it goes. Here's an example. Actually, let me play them at the same time. All right, and finally we have the bass guitar. This is really important in my opinion. Again, since you're playing notes, you're going to pay attention to what chord you're in. We're in the key of F major, and we're pretending we're on the 1 chord. So here's how it goes. You're going to play the 1 note, the F, for 1 whole beat, and then a little rest on 2. Rest means basically nothing, no notes there. On the end of 2, 1, and then on 3 and 4, you're going to hit 1 and 5. So you're going to hit 1 and then, so the one here, and then the second note in the chord, right? These, by the way, are interchangeable depending on what the music calls for. Now, like I said, you don't have to go up, you can go down, and I typically go down. I think I typically go down for the bass guitar. All right. So now altogether, that's going to sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now let's do a variation. Right. This is exactly what I just said. Let's do a variation. Let's pretend we're on the 6th chord, or D in our example. That should say D major, but yeah, let's say we're on the 6th chord, and let's vary up the percussion a little bit to make it more exciting. So let's make it look like this. The basic pattern is still there, high, medium, high, low, but we're going to put a little weak hit on each off count. Okay, and the gira, same thing. We're going to put a hit on every single bongo note. So it sounds like this. All right. Now for the guitars and the bass guitar, remember we're in the 6th chord, so we're going to play with the 6, 1, 3, the 6, 1, 3, and therefore, it's going to look like this: 6, 1, 3, 6, 1, 3, 6, 6, 1. And then the segunda, the rhythm guitar is going to do this. Essentially, the rest of the notes in the chord, again, are on the off counts, and it sounds like this. And okay, finally, the bass guitar. The pattern is very similar, but except now your thumb's on the 6, or the D. I'm sorry, I should have said D minor, not D major. Okay. The 6 lasts for one whole note. There's a rest, and then 6, 3, 6. This is the second note, the third note in the 6th chord again. So instead of going this direction, I usually go this direction. And yeah, same thing. And that sounds like this. All right, and altogether it sounds like this. Good. Let's put it all together. Let's go from the 1 chord variation that we did first with this variation of the 6th chord and see what it sounds like. Now, finally, let's do a little bonus. I'm going to teach you how to do a variation that fuses different styles. And for time purposes, I'm going to focus on the percussion. Especially if you're dealing with dance music, percussion is probably the most straightforward way to fuse different styles. So one way to think about it is, let's keep one instrument in the bachata pattern, but let's change another instrument into another style, for like kizomba, for instance. So here's what that looks like, right? This is the second variation that we did. And instead of doing a hit on every bongo, we are going to do a so-called kizomba or zouk beat or whatever you want to call it. And that's what this looks like. Okay. I'm not going to talk about the guitars or the bass guitar because I think that would take too long. But here's what it sounds like. All right. All right. So I guess this is sort of a summary of part 2. Before you even think about making the remix, well, obviously you need to get an audio file of the song. An a cappella version, basically the vocals only version, is highly preferred, but not absolutely necessary. This website is a very, very, very good resource. It's free. It's pretty well known. You do have to register. Otherwise, try Google and YouTube. All right. Once you have the song, then find the tempo of the song, or the BPM. Like I said, Note Discover has some songs, for BPM and the key. If you can't figure out the BPM, this website has a pretty nifty tool where you just click any button on your keyboard while a song is playing, while the song you want to remix is playing, and the website tells you the BPM, assuming you have good rhythm, which I'm guessing you do. Finally, you find these songs' key and chord changes. So, like I said, Note Discover sometimes has them. You can just Google like the name of your song and then like key, if that doesn't work. For chord changes, ultimateguitar.com is very good if you don't have a musical background. Finally, part 3, making the remix. Well, the first step you're going to take is to open the audio file in the music editing software, which we call the DAW. It's a digital audio workstation. That's basically, the name for this type of software. Then you're going to adjust the tempo of the song for bachata if necessary. Sometimes, a lot of songs are already within that range, so you don't have to. Align the audio's bars. Align your song's bars with the DAW's beat markers. So your software is going to have little markers for the one of each bar, and you just drag that audio file so that it matches those beat markers, and that's a very important step. Let's see, load virtual instruments. Those are called VSTs. You can find a ton of them online for free. Basically, they're little, pieces of software you can download that simulate real instruments. A lot of them are free online. Logic Pro X's virtual instruments are great in my opinion. Next, once you have those instruments in, then you can actually write the notes that we just spent that time on for the music theory. Once you finish, you export the audio, then you become a remix sensation, but hopefully with a better thumbnail than this.